If you're a heavier runner, there's one huge mistake that can nearly double your chances of picking up an injury. So if you're finding yourself frequently injured, there's a few things that you can tweak to ensure smooth sailing. But to get to that big mistake, we first have to go through a story. And this story is absolutely littered with useful knowledge and a free gift to help you avoid injury. So let's give you some context. In June last year, I signed up to the York Marathon. Also around this time, I had the goal of putting on size. These two things combined put me into the category of a heavy runner. Within the first 2 weeks of starting my build, I ran myself into injury. And with only 14 weeks to go until the event, I knew I had to compose a plan quickly. So first things first, I reduced my training volume to allow for my body to recover. And going forward, I decided to get a shoe fitting and a gait analysis. I got this done at a nearby running shop, and after just 2 weeks, I was already feeling the benefits. To keep the momentum strong, I didn't just stop there. I wanted to ensure I was preventing any injury from ever surfacing again. I decided to double down on my nutrition and hydration strategy. This was for one simple reason. When we're heavier, we have a higher energy expenditure from the additional mass that we're carrying. It also takes more energy to move when our body weighs more. This is coupled with the fact that we have increased heat dissipation. Now there's quite a lot to consider there, and funnily enough, it can all be solved with one thing: proper nutrition. So how did I achieve this? To deal with the increased heat dissipation and therefore increased sweat, I took a sweat test to determine how many electrolytes I was losing. It turns out I don't actually lose a huge amount when I run, but I still wanted to get this dialed in. I didn't want any chance of an injury. So I got some salt tablets, and from my recommendations, I started taking a couple every hour when I was out running for longer periods of time. Next up on the list was nutrition. For me personally, and probably a lot of you guys as well, I don't really like to eat too much while I'm running, just because it's so uncomfortable. So I tested a series of gels and ended up going with these by High Five. I started to take one every 30 minutes when I was out for a longer run. Sometimes I'd even have a caffeine gel towards the end if my energy levels started to fall off. Just a quick interruption, if you're finding the video useful so far, don't forget to hit the like button. So now, with the nutrition sorted, I felt really strong on the legs. I got 4 weeks further into the plan with no injury in sight, but one small and very irritating chafe. This leads us to tip number 4. Get some chamois cream. For longer runs, skin friction is gonna happen. Thighs, arms, and weirdly toes, for me, were the 3 main pain points. There's nothing that a bit of chamois cream won't fix. Then a real problem hit. 10 weeks away from the marathon, I got some sharp knee pains. Now with everything I had already put in place, I was really confused. But in reality, I was missing the classic mistake, and my solution at this point just still didn't cover it. So to fix yet another problem, I opted for a higher amount of cross training, as my bigger goal is the Hamburg Ironman this June. So I began cycling more to maintain my endurance while hopefully resting my knee. And while this did help reduce the stress on my joints, it just wasn't enough to fully recover this injury. At this stage, I was pretty much running out of options. My knees felt weak and painful, and I couldn't see any sight of them getting better. I started looking into other ways I could help reduce the pain while running, and I found that running on trails is actually one of the better ways to remove some of the impact. This then reminded me of another tip, which isn't really relevant to this story, but could potentially help you guys, so I'm going to say it anyway. Running on the road is actually softer than running on the pavement, so if you're getting some knee pains, try running on the road instead. It's made of a slightly more bouncy material that's a bit less jarring on the joints. So now, with 7 solutions attempted, and some working but not fully solving the issue, it finally clicked. And it took a while to come to the conclusion, but the verdict was a lack of running specific strength work. This includes exercises like step-ups and single leg squats, which were absent in my current plan. Stronger muscles, particularly those in the core and lower body, can actually help to distribute the weight that you're carrying more evenly, and they'll help reduce the overall strain on your joints. But this wasn't actually the problem. The big problem comes as a result of not performing the strength work, and this leads to poor running form. This is what had been causing me the issue all along. By strengthening the supported muscles that are used while running, I was able to indirectly improve my running form, which in turn reduced my injury to nothing. So what actually happened here? Before completing the running specific exercises, I was unknowingly overstriding. This was causing all the issues I had with my knee. Overstriding is where our foot lands out in front of our body as we run. What the strength exercises did for me was bring my foot underneath my body, reducing the impact on my joints, and it completely removed the injury. It was this tip that got me across the finish line with no injuries at all. Now, just a disclaimer, this injury was removed by all the tips mentioned in this video as a whole. They all played a part in fixing the issue, but the strength work seemed to make the most benefit for me personally. For most people, and even heavier runners, another main cause for running pain is overuse. That's why it was the first point that I wanted to get across from this story. If you pair a deload with running specific strength work, you're going to resolve most common injuries you come across while you're running. So if you want the full cheat sheet out of all the tips in this video, I've created a PDF which I'll leave in the description for you. Go check that out. People usually make the claim that running wears your knees out, especially if you're heavier. But I've found that it actually does the opposite. Running signals to our joints that they need to be protected and thickened. The actual reason why people get painful knees is due to the lack of strength in the supporting muscles of the legs, which leads to poor form. Either that, or it's just an overuse injury. So in order to get the same benefits I did from a strength training, you need to know how to set up a plan to do just that. This video will walk you through the whole process of what exercises work best, so go watch that next.